Let's not overthink it.
All right, Thomas. So first of all, why did you decide to start this particular business?
Yeah, so this business was not the model it is today. Like any business, you have to go where the market's going. And in the world of digital marketing specifically, everything's changing every day. Algorithms, platforms, whatever it may be. I forget the video app. What was the Twitter video?
Twitter video?
Vine.
Oh, yeah.
Vine?
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Right, perfect example, right? So when I started out, there was a big need for drone photography, for listing marketing, for realtors, and that's how I started out. And then as time went on, as I saw more, as I was talking with people and business owners and realtors and all these people in the market, I saw the need for content for businesses, video in particular, photography. And there wasn't a ton of people that did it. Now there are.
Yeah.
But we then pivoted and saw that businesses needed content. And then once they got that content, right, a year later, I'm like, well, I'm giving these people content, then they're not using it how they should.
Yeah.
So over time, I kind of got my way here where I am with the company and figuring out, okay, this is where the market needs us. Is you need the content, you need the advertising, and you need to track it. And that's how we got from 2017 to 5 years in business today of where we are.
So funny. You're conjuring up like hilarious like memories of me like years ago, like at Vine. You know what's funny though? Like Vine, like I'm looking at that now and I'm like, oh my God, that's like TikTok.
Right.
Just like way too early.
Right.
And they finally figured it out. All right, well, that's cool. So you start shooting, you start creating all this content for all these awesome businesses. And then, so it was just what, a natural byproduct. You're like, wait, like these guys aren't even using this thing the right way. So
yeah, and it was customer feedback too. I think one of the things that we do today is that you need to get surveys, you need to get customer feedback. And when you get that, you need to adapt to it. I think businesses that die, right? You look at Blockbuster or, BlackBerry, they're still around, but not as much as they used to be. What did they not do? They didn't listen to customer feedback. They didn't listen to where the market's going. They didn't try and predict where the market's going. They tried to stick in their own ways and they tried to make themselves work in their own ways. And that's how businesses fail. And that's what we didn't do. We're the total opposite. I mean, even right now, and we don't usually share this with people, but we're looking at like, okay, well, we want our business to grow. We want our revenue, our people, our clients to grow, but where's the world going to be in 5-10 years? And we're kind of going off that with Web3, NFTs, and cryptocurrency. We have to, right? Mm-hmm. Will something become of it or not? Doesn't matter. It's irrelevant. But knowing that is relevant and could happen is half the battle.
So without getting too off topic, what's the next 5 years like then?
I have no idea. But if I had to guess, you're going to see some form of NFTs having more of an impact in the marketplace.
Sure.
There are different rumors about cryptocurrencies coming out from different governments. Yeah. So, the United States could start its own cryptocurrency and digital currency. And then for Web3, you can have a totally different world that people are trying to live in, that are going to transact in. That's what I think from an outsider. Now, how do we pivot and help with that? I'm not totally sure yet. We have some concepts and ideas, but it's just knowing that those things are relevant and not being like, that's not going to happen, because it probably will happen to some extent. I look at everyone in here during the workday and they're looking at different NFTs. They're looking at, purchasing different packs for NBA or whatever it may be. And it's a real thing. And not thinking about it and avoiding it is the worst possible thing you can do.
Yeah, a couple of buddies of mine, we're joking like pretty much every week about the metaverse.
Yeah. And
there's going to be this, whatever, they're going to conjure it as like a utopia, right? But like this digital landscape that's infinite, and it's it's as vast as it is small, so to speak. And what's really cool though is really what you just said is like the combination of those two things, where like you've got the ability to have this digital landscape that's so vast. You play video games by chance?
I'm not really now.
I don't either, but are you familiar with the game Skyrim?
Mm-hmm.
So Skyrim is notorious in the gaming world for being like this just vast landscape. It's just almost infinite. And I look at like Web3, it's like kind of like the initial approach to that. And then you have non-fungible tokens. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, the Oculus is a big thing.
So it's gonna be really interesting, man. So, all right. So you've talked about how you got into this and like what's exciting for you and like what's coming next, but You didn't talk about all the feedback because you said you got a lot of feedback from some of your customers.
Yeah.
So like, what was the first thing that like punched you between the eyes?
You know, we were talking about Movie You Junk You, those guys I
Yeah.
met at a chamber event. It was actually the same event I met Drew Braun. And they were like, they asked me, they were like, well, do you do videos for businesses? And I'm like, sure. And I didn't have one in the past. This was very, you know, low budget. It was just trying something out. And I did it. So that was the first piece of feedback where I'm like, okay, this is solid, good feedback on what I should do. When I was doing drone shots, everyone would be like, well, can you do the inside? Sure. Right. And can you do video? Sure. And it kind of all has to come together. And then when we're doing, you know, today we're more of a digital agency. Can you run a Facebook ad? Absolutely. Can you do a Google ad? Sure. Now those are a lot more specialized things. Like you can't just pull out a camera and do it. They're incredibly technical and provide, and it takes a ton of strategy, which I don't think a lot of people realize. But in terms of the customer feedback, there is a fine line between the customer feedback on when you should evolve and when you shouldn't evolve. Like if someone says you should get into NFTs, no, right? We understand they're relevant. We may partake in whatever in the future, but I'm not going to sit here and make NFTs all day. So I think there's a fine line between what that feedback is, but just listening to the consumer and understanding what do they want, what do they need, and what could they use and what could they utilize that they're not aware of. And it's truly taking a strategy perception and just kind of looking at, okay, well, let me put myself inside this business and see what makes sense. And sometimes they have great feedback in terms of, well, how can we track this better? What can we be doing to be a better client for you guys? And now it's a lot more direct like that versus when it used to be as we were growing, can you do this? Can you do that? And now we have our verticals, but I feel like the feedback then and the feedback now are obviously a lot different.
Yeah.
So, but growing as a business, customer feedback and understanding what they wanted and needed for anyone that starts in the business or is in that first 3 years, you have to listen to your customers because you don't know what's right.
Yeah.
You know, unless you're selling insurance where it's cookie cutter, you know, any business that's kind of like loose, you know, maybe it's like automotive, maybe it's marketing, maybe it's any, you know, a tree cutting service. Like there are so many different businesses where there's so many like loose ends that you can make better. And that's when you need to listen to the client, the consumer, and really take their feedback and take it into consideration. And don't take everything they say it's gold, but understand what they really need.
Yeah. I have so many directions I want to take that, but before I get carried away, I want to actually ask you about the beginning.
Yep.
So the beginning of the beginning, if you will. So, you know, and you shared with me kind of a snippet of how you guys started. So you're in high school, right?
Yeah.
And you were getting started out of high school. Why? So in high school, and I'm picturing myself in high school, I was a total knucklehead, and I wish, of course, like everybody else, I wish I knew what I know now back then. But you know, what part of you like had that entrepreneurial spirit where like, you know what, I want to do something?
So very few people actually know this full story, but I'll dive into it. I think it was the AR drone. It was sold on Apple's website. I eyed it up since I was 12 years old. I thought it was the coolest thing in the world. You get your phone out, you know, your iPhone, and it's this little drone. It has like 4 circles on it, and it's flat. Versus today, it's a little thicker. It's a totally different model. You take your iPhone, you could capture video, and it was awful video. I remember it. It was so bad. If you remember what those cameras were like, you know, 12 years ago, I guess 10 years ago, they weren't great. So where the story truly started for me was I would fly that drone because it had like an exterior that was foam. I could fly it inside and it didn't go very fast. Cool. So with my phone, I could go frontwards, backwards. That's how you flew this thing, side. And when you went frontwards, drone went forward. When you slide, drone went to the side. A lot different than they operate today. So I did that. That was 9th grade. So call it, I was 14, 15 years old. And I would do that. I had a video production class, and that's literally all I did. I would fly that drone in the hallway every day because I just loved it. I just loved flying it. I loved capturing the content, flying down the hallway. And also I started basically a weather channel at the school, and they never really had like the weather at the school. But back in 7th grade, I asked the teacher, Mr. Walsh, who ran the video program, can I start the weather channel? Back then it used to be, it was like a minute or whatever. I just tapped on the screen, said the weather, and it went gone. But then in high school, I would make these like weather updates. So if there was like snow coming, like I would get everyone in the school involved, film everyone. And like, I made a big thing out of it. Got teachers involved, the superintendent and Dr. Stanville and I are still very close today. So I just had this passion for creativity and content. And between that and the drone was just the
cool thing,
the tool, right? But like the passion for video was always inside of me.
Yeah.
And then, every time we just hired, I'd say more so acquired a small video business. And his name's Owen, and he had a really good comment. And I'm like, wow, that's kind of like my story. He said, whenever anything that he ever had, it's great parenting in my opinion. Whenever he had a question or needed to do something, sign up for something, whether it was, a camp or it was a program, his dad always made him do it.
Yeah, that's awesome.
He's like, you need the money, you need me to sign something, let me know, but you take care of it. And it was the same thing for me. And it was never like, my mom and dad are just going to set up and I'll go. It was always me being proactive. It was me dealing with the people, me dealing with the clients. And I think it's important that starts at such a young age. The entrepreneurship, I think there's a big difference between just being an entrepreneur and like growing up in an entrepreneur environment. I feel like I definitely grew up in an entrepreneur environment. I couldn't, and everyone says like flexibility. There's no flexibility being an entrepreneur. Is there more money sometimes when another's short, but not really, because everything ends up going to reinvesting and your team, et cetera. There's really not. So when you look at the benefits they even teach you in entrepreneurship class that I learned, they're not really there. Like if you can you earn more money? Absolutely. If you want to, you have to stop growing in order to do that, in my opinion. But like you make your own schedule. Okay, sure. Make your own schedule. Don't show up, and then you lose all your revenue. You lose your team, right? That is not realistic.
Yeah.
But I think it starts with that growing up and just having the right direction on take ownership, do it yourself. And once you have that and you can lead, you're set up for success. And I feel like I had that combined with the video and the drone, and that's what let me get started.
Just trying to what made sense for you at that time.
Yeah, and trust me, I was not crushing it my first year or kind of my second year a little bit, but like,
cares.
Yeah,
you're having fun.
Yeah.
What, and this is completely unrelated too, but what role does curiosity have in the entrepreneurial journey?
In what way?
Well, you use the example of good parenting being, hey, you want to go do something, like you go figure it out.
Right.
Maybe I'll sponsor you, maybe I won't, but like, and showing ownership and doing those kind of things and taking that step, like how important would you say having curiosity about it is? And maybe I'll even give you a little nugget. Like I picture you young, high school, and you just like wanted this drone so bad. And like your curiosity of like figuring this thing out and like screwing around with it. And like, at that point, I'm sure it wasn't even a business. It was just like, no, this is fun. So like how important do you think having curiosity and whatever it is you're after is?
Yeah, I get so frustrated by this with people because they don't have, like, if you're curious, don't not do it because you don't know.
Amen.
And that's the biggest thing. Like when I was starting out, I didn't know anything, right? I didn't know, like I ended up spending $1,700 to create my LLC. Now I call my buddy up down the street and he's like, one of the best attorneys in town is like, it's $400, $400 total, covers our fee and the LLC stuff, or, 500 can actually, but like knowing that was what I knew then and what I know today is one instance. It was the first decision I had to make as a business owner. And that I didn't know, right? You don't know what you don't know.
Yeah. So
between just that, not knowing the market, like I had no idea where we're going to be in 5 years. Am I curious? Not really, because I like to ride at this point.
Sure.
And I think that's the biggest part of it. Like when I don't know something, I don't either not do it, not try it, or guess. I commit to it. So like if I want to know about, I've got a new client that's a little different. Like I'm curious, like what is their business? Is it going to work? I don't know. I tell them that, but you got to figure it out. And if you set those expectations, you can just try it out.
Yeah.
And this client in particular is not going to find anyone else to do it. I can tell you that. And that's why we're their last resort. So it's like just having curiosity and then having fun with that curiosity. It's a risk. It really is a risk. And that's why I think we've been so successful, is that we've taken those risks and we've been curious, and it's worked out more than it hasn't.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know, I'd almost argue is like, maybe it's not a risk, you know, it's just like, if you're following like what gives you joy, like,
Yeah,
who the hell cares?
you're right. But you heard my mentoring here earlier, and it's, you know, we're at a spot where this time last year, we had one full-time employee.
Yeah. Right
Right now we have four full-time employees, and we're going to have 2 more in the next 3 months. So there is definitely a risk to scaling that quickly and having that many salaries, because if you lose 3 of your top clients, it's all over. You know, like it's not all over, but like you gotta pivot fast, and you have 30, 60 days to figure it out.
Yeah.
You know?
Tough to be curious then, huh?
Right. Right. And we're of course prepped for all that with reserve. So if you guys are watching, don't worry. But like it's about, and of course, like now it's a lot easier, right? Like we have reserves, we have, a company that's structured to, if we lose a few clients, our top clients, like it's like call up the next guy because we're almost at capacity, like we're okay. But like hiring 2 people at the same time because you have to hire them, there's a risk to that.
Sure. All right, let's get into it then. So heard you talking just now, plus earlier, about bringing on 2 more people, or at least you're posting for the jobs. Congrats, by the way, that's a big step. So talk to me about whether it's a creative process or more of just like a fundamental process that you go through with your team of like, okay, we've hit a brick wall. We now need to bring on some new folks. I think everybody can kind of see the obviously inherent risks with that, right? Because that's being backed by business. So how do you come to that conclusion? Like, what's that conversation like?
Yeah, so I'm not going to use these 2 because it's very new and recent. We haven't made the decision. I like to look at the past. I believe in 2 things: data-driven decisions, and success leaves clues.
Okay.
So those are my 2 mottos kind of in business now.
Okay.
So let me look back to, last year at this time when we're looking to hire our director of ops. Definitely could not really afford to bring on another person at that time. But I knew, and he'll tell you the same thing. It was like, buying a stock that is valued at $50 and we got it at, 35. It's like, why would you not? Right. And I told my coach that, and I told Steve that. And he needed this opportunity for him. So we had a decision to make, and it wasn't easy, but it just felt right in the gut. And that's why we made the decision. If we look at some of our other team members, it's that feeling. It's like, this is the right thing to do. And we've made the decision, and it hasn't worked out. Trust me, that has happened multiple times, but it's tough because when I made those decisions, I know that it wasn't like the decision I should have made. I knew I had to do it, but I wasn't 100% of the way there.
Now, did this gut feeling, was this the feeling that came like during the interview process, or this was more of like a preemptive feeling, like, like maybe it's not the right time, but like,
no, this is, I believe on the sleep on it model. I usually make the decision before I go to bed. The night I bought my car, right? I test drove it. I'm like, I want this. And then I woke up the next day. I'm like, I still want this.
What'd you buy, by the way?
Model 3 Performance Tesla.
Nice.
Yeah. So I woke up, I put the deposit down, like I'm going with it, and it's not a big deal, right? Yeah. And it's the same thing with people. It's like, wake up, I have the job offer. I'm like, am I going to send this or not? And I have to ask myself, because the biggest misconception in business, people simplify things, right? They're like, well, if you do $1 million revenue, you can have X, X, and X. Like, no, like that's not how it works.
Not for every business. Yeah.
No, it's like, think of how many products, how many service issues, all the expenses that go into the business. People have no idea what goes into it. And I think that's like, you could look at the smallest issue on a line item as, cleaning. Okay, well, that cleaner's got to be scheduled. They've got to be paid. They've got to be, like, got to figure out the change orders, right? Like, can they not come in on a Saturday? Can they come in on Sunday? Then you look at the water delivery, right? Think about how many items there are to spend, and then how many items there are to come in. And that's all got to be managed and overseen by someone. And that's where it's like, it's not you hire a person and you have this much in revenue. It's not that easy. There's so much that goes into a successful model. And I think that that's just why I have to make the decision at the end of the day. And it's not necessarily a money decision. And that's what makes money hard. It is not a money decision.
So your framework is data first. Okay, what's the number telling us? I'm not going to, or you said you do sleep on it, but you make your decision before you go to bed. And then you just stick with that decision.
Yep. And 80% of the time that's consistent, 20% of the time I wake up and I'm like, no.
Screwed up.
Yeah. And usually, believe it or not, the decisions are client decisions. Usually if I want to work with a client, I make the decision the night before and then I wake up and then sometimes I'm like, you know what? I don't think I maybe I'll help this person.
Let's talk about that. What would make you say no to a deal?
If I don't feel like it's a good fit, I know that's very general, but I don't want to work with someone that small businesses, number one, are very tough to work with because everyone's different. Some people are, you know, I saw something the other day. It's like the $1,000 client. It's like they're on you every single day. And then the $5,000 client is like, here's the money. And then sometimes they don't care, right? And then the $30,000, $50,000 projects are like, you know, they're involved, they're a part of it. There's pressure, but it's very professional. And that's the realm we like to play. But if I see something and I'm like, this is just not going to pan out well, I'm not going to do it.
Yeah. Not to share my own story, but that's so true. So I think I shared with you, I'm a sales manager and I've negotiated contracts of just various sizes, teeny tiny little deals, all the way up to, we just signed a $40 million deal. And it's so true. The bigger the deal, it's almost like the more collaborative it becomes and the better that experience is for everybody. The smaller it is, it's just crap.
Yep.
Don't chase that stuff.
Yeah.
That's great, man.
But you have to learn that.
You do.
And that's why I think, unfortunately, a lot of businesses fail is they go after that level of the, you know, the smaller ticket items and
think it'll be easy.
Yeah. And we're going to have to, you know, make some tough decisions here in the next 6 months as we grow and scale, because we're not going to be able to become that next level company with some of our current clientele. So there are going to be some tough conversations in terms of how we're going to pivot. And I will say some things happen, they'll just happen, you know, like you don't have to think about it. You have to make a decision and you just have to do it. Those situations happen a lot too.
Let's talk about some of your big wins. Since we're on the topic of sales and something I love talking about.
Yeah.
You know, you've got a pretty impressive wall back here of some of your top customers. Talk to me about, like, I don't necessarily care how you met them or anything, but I'd love to hear about that conversation, like how you went about winning over, you know, their business and how you developed that.
We keep sales very high energy here. Revenue is obviously important. It drives the company, but I want everyone to be involved with it. I bring in about 75 to 80% of the sales. The team does the rest. You know, we get business from our SEO and our own digital marketing and my network, mostly. But when we have something called a 2-call close. So the first call is like, let's vet them. Let's see if they're a good fit for us. We're a good fit for them. The second call, we're usually finalizing the details, going through some things and seeing what's going on. So that's kind of like the 1-2, and then realize if we want to work with them. But in terms of like the business themselves, we need to make sure that they are a good fit. So what does that mean? We have proper expectations. We have a good meeting flow. We have good commitments to each other. But we really try to drive the sales of the company first and then the production. So we kind of like have to split our time like that, because you have to, we call it sell the coffee and then you got to make the coffee. So we have to make sure that they go hand in hand.
I'm going to steal that, by the way.
Yeah, do it. So I stole that from one of my mentors, and his was make the donuts, sell the donuts. I'm like, well, we're healthy. So.
Just black coffee.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool.
Some heavy cream.
So how about on the other side of that? You know, inevitably, I'm sure you've had some customers come to you and say, hey, you know, I'm sorry, like, we're done. You know, what have been some, maybe not even a customer either, but like, what have been some of the big losses you've had to deal with?
So the big wins are, I want to go over that because I think I skipped that. So the big wins are definitely the sales and the months. I don't know if they're individual sales. Sometimes they are, but they're mostly months.
So not necessarily a customer,
yeah,
but like, oh my God, like August was out of the water.
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, obviously if you look at the time wall, like HotSpot's like, oh my God, this is incredible.
Yeah.
You know, we work with a few publicly traded companies. When we get those deals, oh my God, this is exciting. One deal isn't going to change us.
Sure.
It just can't with kind of like where we're at. But it's exciting. Like you get everyone in this office and it's just like a good, you know, Wednesday, Thursday sales wise, everyone's just pumped.
Everyone's
just
drinking
like,
Moscow Mules.
yeah, everyone's just go, go, go. We have a lot of fun. We keep that sales momentum exciting. And those are the wins there. But I wouldn't say they're sales. Like I think it's days, it's months. It's like some days we leave here and we're like, wow, we just had a fun day. And the production's the production. And that's usually where the losses happen, right? Because you have to gain the client and you're going to lose the client. At some point in time, clients have an end. Whether the businesses disappear, you know, I've had a few clients that we lost during COVID because they shut down.
Sure.
I have a few clients, when COVID started, it was awful. I mean, it was a 48-hour period where we lost half our revenue, gone. And we had to pivot the entire business. So, you know, and then you have clients that are like, well, we're upset you laid people off. And it's like, well, what do you want me to do? You cut our fee in half and now you're upset that we let them go. Yeah. Like what? So it's tough. When clients leave, it's frustrating, no matter what it was, whether it was our fault, whether it was their fault, whether it was mutual. We have many clients who they'll engage with us. We do our job, but then they don't live up to their end of the bargain.
Sure.
And that's frustrating too. But at the end of the day, the proper expectations need to be there. As a business, we haven't really struggled with like, oh my God, we lost X amount of sales other than the beginning of COVID. We're pretty good at pivoting. Even that was probably a 30-day loss. We came back from COVID probably 30 days later. We just had to pivot with our service offerings. I just went down to me and one other, and we just went after it. So the harder losses and the harder things are definitely the people. If you lose a person, you know, that can be really difficult. Partners. The month of February, we had a lot of changes in our business, and it was a tough 2 weeks of decisions and changes. You know, one was we separated from a partner with 4 clients. So we lost a ton of revenue in February, and we also had to spend a lot of money to fix the issues that were going wrong. And then, you know, another thing was worked with my coach for about 18 months, and it was just time to kind of like implement, which was awesome, but it was a big change. Because I feel like it was a great 18 months of learning, and then it's like, okay, well, now it's time to do it, you know? And that's why we've exploded, is because it's like, all right, I learned all this great content and information from my coach, and now I get to implement it. Do it, right. And that was the biggest explosive thing. So I feel like all these things, you know, legal issues popped up. There were different things in the month of February that were very like, it's just like every day. It's just
fun
like,
month.
Yeah, it was just like punch. And it was exhausting. But now it was such a great thing to do because we had to do that then, so we could explode in March, explode in April, and explode for the rest of the year. And that's the pivot. We have about 60 days where we can change the whole course of our business every year. And then we're at a basically completely jump. So we're at, you know, X level, and that's pop. And we did that at such a good time, and now we're blowing up. So those hard decisions, and this is what I've said before, because I think it's important. The hard decisions that we make and the losses, they have to be next to an explosion. Yeah. You know, it's just like I hate to say it, but it's just like the stock market. Like if you look at history throughout the Dow Jones, forever it's been around. 51% of the days it's been in the green. 49% of the days it's been in the red. But guess how much it's gone up, right? The highs just need to be higher than the lows. It's the same thing in business. We can lose clients, but the clients that we gain need to be bigger than the ones we lose.
Well said. That was really good. I'm gonna steal that one too. Right?
Please do.
So I want to talk about people for a minute, because you've kind of brought up this theme throughout our conversation here. And the first thing I want to ask you about is your decision to bring people on. And you'd refer to earlier conversation of just like having a good feeling about somebody and sleeping on it and doing all that kind of stuff, knowing the data ahead of time. But like, what's your criteria for bringing somebody into your team? How do you sort talent? How do you know they're the right person? I think you said right person, wrong seat, or right seat, wrong person.
Right.
What's that all mean?
Yeah, that's tough. So you have to have The right person means the core values. Going off the book traction, you have to make sure they align with your core values, your mission statement, make sure they fit in with the culture and the appeal of the company. You have to have that first and foremost, number one. Because if you don't have that, you don't have a good fit for your company. And then the seed is, can that person do the job that you need them to do at the current time? So if you need if you're an auto mechanic and you need someone to sit at the front, okay, do their values align with your mission? Yes, good, okay. And that person needs to sit at the front, that's great. What if that person needs to be a mechanic? They're a good culture fit, but they can't fix a car. So it's the same, our stuff's a little more complicated, so I'm just using that, but like, it's the right person, wrong seat mentality. Like, you have to find the right person, and then you have to make sure that that person is right for the role, because you can hire someone and then 90 days later be like, okay, you're great, we love you in this company, but you're not doing what we need you to do. We need you to do X, and someone else is already doing X, so we can't have you run.
Yeah.
So you have to make hard decisions like that. There will be people around, and oftentimes we have the wrong person in the right seat, and they're not doing, they're crushing the job, but you're just keeping them around and they're destroying your culture. So you have to make tough decisions then too. And that's the toughest part.
So you've got a business partner.
No.
You don't have a business partner. You have one.
Mm.
Did you say you separated with the business partner?
Oh, sorry. So partner, just like, so we have a lot of like vendor partners.
Vendor partners. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm sorry. So
There's a lot of them actually.
then I'm thinking of your first hire,
Okay.
or what's his name again?
He was my third hire. Steve.
So, and you were pretty excited about bringing Steve into your organization.
Mm-hmm.
What makes you excited about bringing him in, or what made you excited about?
So we knew each other for 3 years before Steve joined here, 4 now. And he offered me a job 3 years before he joined here.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So that's exciting, and he knows. So we actually, I think the most exciting thing is, as soon as COVID started, he came in this office we're sitting in right now, and right here was my desk. And he said, I want to have a desk right next to yours someday. And that was a whole, year and some months before that actually happened. So we've been planning out this vision to blow this thing up for years. And when you have that opportunity and you have that fit like that finally comes together, that's luck. You don't always have that. And when I went to him someday, one day he was like, hey, I think I'm ready. And boom.
What was he doing before?
Director of operations. It's the same thing at another company.
Cool. Yeah, that's nice too, when you get a nice fit like that. Like,
Yeah.
they know they got the experience, you get to feel each other out ahead of time. So how important, so the hiring process, kind of going back to that idea. So how much time do you spend interviewing people, talking with them?
Yeah, so we have a five-step interview process. The first thing is looking at their resume, their cover letter. We give them a call, kind of like run them through. I think it's like 5 questions. We give a 5 to 10 minute range of a phone call. If we like what they say, we set up an interview. So that's step 2. Step 2 is we bring them for an interview. We have 3 question sheets that we run through. The more we like them, the more questions we ask to dig. Once they leave, we usually bring them in for a second project, bring them in for a second interview and give them a project. And then that project is provided to them with explanation. They can ask questions at that time. They then present us the project, and they come in for, they send us the project, then they come in for a final interview. And that's typically when we'll present an offer.
Awesome. That's cool. I like that. I always love organizations that give you a little homework.
Yeah.
See how committed you are to the.
Yeah, you have to, because that way you get every side of it. And it's tough now. There's a people problem, they say. So.
They say.
Well, I think it's tough because I think a lot of people aren't great at hiring. And I think there is definitely a people shortage to some capacity, but I also think there are a lot of great people out there. And, we're very receptive to who we're interviewing. Do you have other offers? Who are you interviewing with? Are you interested in this position? And I can tell you that we've been able to find people when we need them. I think some things have definitely been a struggle for us to find, like certain types of people. The people that are kind of like more active in the trade more so industry is very hard to find. And for our clients too. So the trades, I think, is hard to find. But for us and people working from home, I think it's very easy to find out right now, because people like that. They want that. So that's been a big thing.
So, you bring people into your organization. It sounds like you've got a hell of a program, but the flip of that coin is this culture piece that you actually brought up, and I picked it out when we started talking about bringing like Utz on, right? You're like this huge environment, like everyone's like super happy and like top of the world. And I would just look at my previous experiences, and as a leader, that's like really tough to like keep that sort of energy all the time. Like, how much time do you focus on morale in your office? With your people. We were talking about this earlier. Is like the more people you bring onto your team, it's like the less operations it is, and it's all just about what's happening with the folks in your office.
Well, I think when you're mentioning as in culture, I think what you're mentioning is inspiration.
Sure.
And I think there's a big difference. Like us as a company going out this morning and playing spike ball is a culture thing. Us going to the Poconos and getting a house on the water for a night and a day is culture. But the inspiration comes from, okay, well, let's talk about the company. Let's talk about you guys. Like, this is not, I never want to have someone who comes into an office, is here from 9 to 5, goes to get work done, goes home and just is like, this is just like working at, Allstate as a, in accounting, like I want people to come in here and have a greater vision for what they can do, because when they have a greater vision and have something to work for and something to be a part of, there's a lot more to that. Our tagline is imagine, capture, inspire. Imagine what it can be, right? Then capture is kind of like to make it happen, and then inspire is like gotta inspire, right? Steve is a lot different person he is today than he was a year ago. When he came in, he was the one that I needed to say, imagine it, then capture, then inspire. He's at the point now to where he imagined it, he did it, and now it's time for him to inspire others. So when we bring people on, like there's a culture fit, but there's also this whole other element of inspiration that in my opinion is totally separate from culture. And that's why I focus so much on the growth of the company. And that's why I think my story is so important. Like I don't do it to brag that I started this in high school or I'm successful at 22. I do it to say, okay, forget about everything forget about everyone that's limited you in your life. Think about what you can be. And that's why I share the story. And people hate me sharing the story sometimes, but it's so important, because this is what's going to inspire others. A 17-year-old kid 5 years later who built a business with, almost, call it $1 million business now, with a good team, good culture, good client base, 250, 300 clients a year. Like that's a part of what I want to tell them, because we're a young team. I have disclosure to say this. Our average age in our company right now is 23 and a half years old. Tell me another marketing company with 5 people that has that average.
Probably not.
Right. But we have young, sharp people, and that's what it's all about.
Awesome, man. So you said, there's obviously this delineation between culture and inspiration. Obviously they're probably pretty closely correlated. So like, what are the things that you pay attention to when, and you brought up a couple awesome examples, by the way, like spike ball and sounds fun, by the way.
Yeah.
And some other stuff that you do with your team, like how much of that stuff in your mind should be like structured and like thought of ahead of time, and how much of that is just like Thomas just on the fly?
Yeah, no, it's definitely me on the fly for interviews and bringing people on. Most entrepreneurs are going to be familiar with traction. So we use the ROC system. So the ROCs are the company's 3 big goals for the quarters. One's revenue, one is our SOPs, and the last one is actually mission statement and core values, because we have them in our head, but we don't have them written down. And I waited this long for a reason. I didn't want it to be me. I want it to be a team effort. And it's important that we did that, because this business isn't me, it's a team. And in 10 years, when we have 100 people, am I still going to be the front? Maybe, but it's about the team as a whole. So a whole ROC, 33% of our whole entire objective this quarter for Q2 is focused on our mission statement, our core values, a team retreat day, and 1 team building activity per month. It is so important to us as a company to have that. We're in a very high intensity environment. It can be tense at times with how much we have going on. We're fast growing. So I think it's so important to always have that. And that's why making it such a priority every single day of every single quarter, to make sure that we're working on the company and our people and the culture. So it's priority number 1.
Awesome. So, so your mentor walked in here, off camera a little bit ago. I think mentorship, I mean, and I'm speaking of complete bias here, but I think mentorship is so important. I've gained a lot of valuable insights from the relationships I've had with, coaches and mentors in the past, but, maybe talk to me a little bit, how'd you meet your mentor? What sort of influence has he had on your life?
Yeah, you have to seek mentors out. I talk about this in every interview I do. I think mentorship is the key to success. Success leaves clues, right? I said that, and that's mainly from mentors. So I had a coach. I have, Eric walked in. I would consider more of a life mentor to me. I've also someone Eric actually introduced to me. I think I'm actually going to take on as a mentor. I asked him, and he's on board with it. He's just incredible. This guy's incredibly sharp. But there are different people that are going to serve different areas. But I have had, my dad, my coach, and many different mentors throughout the years. And you have to ask. Like, I think it's important to call it what it is, right? If it is a mentor, like, you have to create that relationship and know that that's what it is. Because as you climb the ladder, the people that are going to be mentoring are going to be at different levels. And I think Eric just reached out to me and he said, "Hey, let's grab coffee," 4 years ago. And we talked, the things he told me then 4 years ago are things that have happened. Here's what business you need to get out of. Here's what business you need to get into. Like, it's all been relevant. But I think, forget about the referrals that they give you, but the guidance that they can provide, and not doing things because, we talked about kind of like what works, what doesn't. I think the stock market, right? The 5149, I think I've had a lot more green than I've had red because of mentors telling me. I see a lot of business owners and entrepreneurs getting started, and they're just arrogant and ignorant, not a good combo. And they don't have a mentor. They don't have someone to listen to. And when you get in that spot, it's very hard to succeed. You can maintain, but you're not going to build. And I think, knowing that I don't know everything and not having that level of arrogance has made me very successful. Now, have I been hurt listening to others too much sometimes? Absolutely. But the only way you can grow is really with mentors who can help guide the way, because they've been there before. How are you supposed to know how a CEO of $100 million a year company works? Can you act like you know and you think you know? Sure. But like, you have no idea, right? You and I have no idea. But if you find the person that's at that next level to where you want to go, they can help get you there.
CEO probably doesn't even know either.
Right.
So how do you pick a mentor?
It's got to be a good personality fit, similar core values, similar alignment, because they're usually going to help you get, make suggestions and make recommendations. Different, same spots in life. Like if they live on, an island, like that's where you want to be, sure, go do it. I'm the kind of guy who I want to live here in Westchester. Do I want to have a nice house? Sure. I know, like, my mentor I'm talking to now, he lives, my girlfriend was like, I went over to his house on Friday and I'm like, this is the life that she's trying. You were like sitting there like, this is exactly what I want. I'm like, yep. So but that's it, right? Like, I want someone who's like this next level, like, is doing lives out where I like. They're doing something that I'd be cool doing.
Replicates the lifestyle,
right? It doesn't matter. Like, a mentor doesn't have to do the same. I've never had a mentor. I've had one mentor. It's not one holy word. That's actually a marketing company that's still a lot bigger than us. And he was very helpful. But most of my mentors, I kind of separate out, like, who's my marketing business mentor, who's my life mentor, who's my CEO mentor, who's my business,
have a guy for everything.
Have a guy for everything, right? And I said that in my last interview too, like, have a great accountant, have a great bookkeeper, have a great CFO, have a great marketing team. Like, you have to just have great people that you can go to, because that's the only way you can grow.
Love that. It's good stuff, man. I got one last question for you.
Yeah.
It's probably not the most important question. I got one last one.
Yeah.
It means a lot to me. I can tell you're an avid reader. You brought up actually one of my personal heroes, Ray Dalio. I'll ask another conversation you had, but top 3 books. What do you got? Top 3. Hit me.
Do they have to do with business?
No, they can be whatever you want, man.
That's a tough one.
So you got some good ones over there.
I really like the book Killing Reagan.
Killing Writing. Okay.
Yeah, I read that on a plane ride, long plane ride once. It's a weird, I just love those books by Bill O'Reilly. They're just great stories.
Yeah.
So Killing Writing was a great one. I read all the his books actually, but that's my favorite.
Okay.
I really like, and my dad told me this to read this book when I was young, The Art of War.
Yeah.
That's a really, really solid book.
He's got another book, and of course I can't think of it now. And actually, if you remind me, I'll lend it to you.
Okay.
But it's very similar, but it's all philosophy just on living,
Yeah.
not on war, which is really interesting. It's a
Interesting.
completely like a polar approach to whatever you'll get it. But
So the last one is a different one, and I forget the name of it. Oh, The Defining Decade.
Mhm.
And I think it's important for anyone to read. It's what can you do in your 20s that'll set you up for your entire life. And I always recommend that to anyone in their 20s because I think the biggest problem in this world is college. In one way or another, right? Debt, education, whatever. The defining decade, right? If you start your life out with $200,000 in debt, how are you supposed to recover that? The other thing I want to share with anyone that I ever come in contact is I'm in school full time. I'll be graduating in a year. So in 5 years, if I can build $1 million company and still go to school full time and not come out with any debt, then people should have no problem doing it.
yeah, that's awesome.
So I'm not going to Harvard, but I think college debt is. I think college debt is.
It's an atrocity. It's a beast as well as it's young.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So a whole different conversation.
That is a conversation we could probably talk about for hours. Something I'm very passionate about. So
Yes.
this has been a pleasure, man.
Yeah, man.
Thanks so much.
Thanks for bringing me on.
Yeah. Man.